Trucks. It's hard to travel anywhere without seeing them. The fact is, nearly everything we come in contact with has spent at least a part of its journey on a truck. The food we eat, the clothes we wear, and the electronics we use every day have made their way to our homes and businesses thanks to the trucking industry, an industry with strong roots in New Jersey. Today, New Jersey is home to more than 20,000 trucking companies, which carry goods vital to the state's economy over thousands of miles of highways and roads. New Jersey trucks serve 85% of the state's communities and are responsible for 250,000 jobs, 1 in every 14. It's hard to believe that a century ago, none of this vast network of highway infrastructure, transportation technology, and skilled people existed. Back in the early 1900s, New Jersey had just begun the paving of roads. The typical road was a wagon trail, little more than a stretch of cleared land which was often impassable, mud in the spring and fall, a frozen, rutted obstacle course in winter. People carted goods with the horse and wagon. In fact, the country had 17 million horses and only about 400 trucks. 400 trucks in the whole country. It was during these early days that our story begins. It's a remarkable story, a story of advancing technology and vast changes in the New Jersey landscape and economy. The New Jersey Motor Truck Association was there at every critical bend in the road to help the state's trucking industry develop and grow. Some say the age of trucking began in 1903 when the new Automobile Club of America sponsored a 40-mile race in New York City. The race put trucks to the test against horses. After a tough 2 days, the winner was a 16-horsepower delivery wagon made by the Knox Automotive Company. Trucks would slowly replace horse-drawn carts, making horses obsolete. The first trucks were pieced together by individual carriage shops with whatever materials they had on hand. There were no standards for parts. Maintenance was a nightmare. The machines were heavy, cumbersome, and difficult to drive. Then, truck manufacturing was born. Companies like Winton and Rio, Autocar, White, Rapid, which became the General Motors Corporation, Studebaker, Brockway, and Mack invented the industry. All this new machinery made people nervous. Not surprisingly, government stepped in to regulate the new technology. The state issued an order requiring every truck to have a mirror scope. But with trucks riding on solid rims over primitive roads, mirrors just cracked and shattered. The state's requirement wasn't practical, and compliance would cost truck owners plenty of money. And so, in December 1914, the Newark Evening News published a meeting notice to organize truck owners. Led by J.T. Castendieck of the Packard Motor Truck Company, 10 trucking pioneers met to consider the hurdles that were coming: restrictive legislation, heavy taxation, opposition from competing modes of transportation, and public misunderstanding. They decided to become a voice for their new industry. The group formally incorporated as the Motor Truck Club of New Jersey on February 25, 1915. The first officers, David Harper, president, and John F. Winchester, secretary, set up an office in Newark. They held only occasional meetings until 1917, when they initiated a drive to increase membership. Before long, the roster grew to nearly 500 private carriers, contract carriers, and suppliers. 1917 proved to be a watershed year. It was the eve of America's involvement in World War I, and it was the beginning of a new activist approach for the fledgling Motor Truck Club of New Jersey. In that year, the club persuaded Motor Vehicles Commissioner Dill to rescind an order banning trucks from a list of streets in Cranford convinced Jersey City officials to suspend an order which prohibited trucks on the community's asphalt roads, successfully opposed the Pennsylvania Railroad's plan to construct a grade crossing on the Lincoln Highway in favor of a bridge, and appealed to the Essex County Board of Freeholders to construct a tunnel between Jersey City and Lower Manhattan. That's right, the club was the first advocate of what would become the Holland Tunnel. President Harper and Secretary Winchester served on a committee with Mr. Holland to plan traffic approaches to the tunnel. But the club's first major project in that milestone year was to stop proposed legislation that would impose increased registration fees, dimensional restrictions, weight limitations, and standards for determining the size of tires. The legislation stemmed from complaints that overloaded and untired trucks were damaging highways, manholes, and culverts. The club fought the legislation by staging the first highway test of trucks conducted in this country. Supervised by the Hudson County engineer, the test assembled units with different sized tires to demonstrate their bearing surfaces on the Belleville Pike. The result? Revealing data about the bearing capacities of various sized tires prevented drastic new regulations on truckers. Also in 1917, the club published its first official monthly bulletin to communicate with its members. That first October issue featured the slogan, "The Watchdog for New Jersey Motor Truck Owners." The club continued to grow in membership and community involvement during World War I. Members of the club joined the New Jersey State Council of Defense. The governor appointed President Harper as chairman. His first official act was a snow removal program to clear state roads. In other wartime activities, the club instituted a return loads program to save fuel, tires, time, and labor, which was highly praised by government officials. Donated an ambulance to the soldiers at Camp Dix, paid for by donations from members and friends. Established a new headquarters and hired its first full-time executive secretary, Alfred D. Way, who would serve until 1935, and Mrs. Judy Hollister, who would stay with the association for 43 years until her death in 1961. After the war came the Roaring Twenties, and the club also roared onward in its new watchdog role under a new bulldog logo. Prosperity led to new and improved roads, accompanied by proposed new laws to increase registration fees and impose mileage taxes. The club defeated these laws in the courts and managed to defeat a proposed gasoline tax 3 times before New Jersey became the last state in the Union to impose a gas tax, 2 cents a gallon, in 1926. The 1930s plunged the nation into the Great Depression. In 1933, John Winchester returned to the presidency, oversaw a new constitution to expand the scope of its efforts, and the renaming of the club to the New Jersey Motor Truck Association, and from a new headquarters on Newark's High Street, went to work on a bold new agenda. In 1934, he went to Washington, D.C. to work with other leaders in the industry on the Motor Truck Code. He and colleagues like John V. Lawrence soon became leaders of a new national organization called the American Trucking Associations. Winchester was elected vice president to represent the New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut area for the newly formed ATA. Although the Depression didn't end until World War II, it is said that the golden age of trucking actually began in the 30s with the Motor Carrier Act of 1935, which established federal regulations governing interstate commerce by trucks, while states continued to regulate intrastate trucking. By the time World War II reached America on December 7, 1941, New Jersey truckers were carrying a large part of the state economy. They continued as war made new demands, transporting military equipment, medical supplies, and food to the New York City and Philadelphia piers. They responded to labor shortages by setting aside hours of service limits so that load after load of essential freight could be delivered to the military. Truck operators with government contracts became so essential they were able to obtain tires, fuel, and other scarce commodities to keep the shipments moving. The military and the general population came to understand that American truckers helped win the war with their reliable, unstinting service. Peace brought more opportunities. Thanks to the GI Bill, veterans could acquire low-cost government loans, which enabled many association members to start new trucking companies. The government was also investing massively in infrastructure. Eisenhower's interstate highway system laced the country with efficient roads. New Jersey became a transportation hub. And as the population moved from the cities to new housing developments in outlying areas, businesses soon followed, creating new transport needs and truck routes. By the time the New Jersey Turnpike opened in 1953, the trucking industry had become indispensable to the booming peacetime economy. Registration of trucks soared. By 1952, nearly 214,000 trucks were registered in New Jersey, and almost 9 million trucks were registered in the United States. And the association continued to grow. The members launched Operation Homeward Bound to raise $120,000 for a permanent headquarters in 1962. In 1964, the association held its 50th anniversary convention, where several longtime members and past presidents were honored. On April 27, 1968, the new headquarters, located in East Brunswick, was formally dedicated. As you walk through the building and around the grounds, you'll see plaques honoring major donors to the building fund. The names read like a who's who of trucking in New Jersey. Names recalling great companies built during remarkable times in our nation's history. In the mid-1970s, during Bill Jane's tenure, the association established the Public Education Committee and won a sales tax exemption for the trucking industry when Governor Byrne lifted the levy on purchases of trucks, trailers, parts, and leasing. When Governor Florio repealed the exemption in 1990, the NJMTA quickly persuaded him to reinstate it. Yet the biggest challenge of this time was not taxes, but deregulation. The Motor Carrier Act of 1980 completely transformed the competitive environment. Fleets which had prospered under regulation were forced to diversify, merge, or go bankrupt. The companies which had built the modern trucking industry, many of them early members of the NJMTA, began to disappear. And with this landmark legislation, the golden age of trucking came to an end. But the loss of many longtime members did not weaken the association's resolve. When the New Jersey Turnpike Authority raised truck tolls by 135% in 1990, the association launched a successful boycott of the Turnpike. As a result, the authority agreed to volume discounts and increased its coordination activities with the association. While the NJMTA has fought to protect the interests of the industry, its members have always been helpful and generous to the community. Members brought tank loads of water to Trenton when the city had a week-long water shortage, donated drivers and trucks for the victims of Hurricane Andrew, and have provided other volunteer services, large and small. In the early dark hours following the September 11 attacks, word went out to association members that trucks were needed. New Jersey truckers gave and gave. They offered equipment, people and expertise to do whatever was needed. Association headquarters became a virtual clearinghouse for the transport logistics emergency created by 9/11. NJMTA served as the contact for the Federal Emergency Management Administration, the New York City Mayor's office, and every church, school, and organization collecting donations. When Executive Director Gail Toth was honored with the United States Department of Transportation's 9/11 Medal on July 21, 2003, she said, "It is with great pride that I receive this award on behalf of the members of NJMTA and all of the trucking companies and truck drivers who responded to my calls for help." There was a tremendous outpouring of assistance from the trucking community. We were the only mode left standing. The trains, planes, and ports had all shut down, but trucks kept America moving. Since that time, NJMTA has become the state's Highway Watch Program coordinator, educating truck operators on security procedures and practices in a post-9/11 world. Over the past 10 decades, the trucking industry has evolved, and so has the New Jersey Motor Truck Association. But our goals have always remained the same: to serve, protect, and promote the welfare of motor truck owners. The association continues to be a leading advocate of highway safety and works to promote a positive image of the industry. It's a story of progress, innovation, and advocacy. It's the story of the giving human spirit of the association's members that started 100 years ago. And it's a story that continues.